On today's episode,
one of the people that is out there pushing the very boundaries of human potential, Mike Walsh.
A seed round investor in Uber who also believes compassion is good commerce.
There are just a lot of people that are having a tough time running businesses, and I just think empathy is huge. And if we can do that as a venture capital firm, I think that's a great differentiator.
I'm going to make a bold proclamation. The future will be punctuated by the most successful companies on earth being driven by people who actually care about their customer.
It's time to go inside Quest with host Tom Bilyeu, president and co-founder of the second fastest growing private company in America. And now he's uncovering the universal principles of success.
I can tell you right now what principle number one is: follow your passion.
Inside Quest starts right now.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Inside Quest. We are the laboratory for the intellectual engineer, and today we have a guest with us that is one of the people that is out there pushing the very boundaries of human potential. He is somebody whose thoughts and rhetoric on generosity, giving back, and not being an asshole are in perfect lockstep with the way that he lives his life and does his business. And despite all of that, he's somebody that you'll find featured in articles with titles like Meet the Uber Rich, a nod to one of his staggeringly successful investments. He is a rare bird in the world of VCs. He's founded and run his own successful company, as well as reaching dizzying heights as a venture capitalist by being, of all things, a nice guy. So please help me in welcoming the general partner of Structure Capital, seed stage investor, and somebody whose kindness most certainly will not be mistaken for weakness, Mike Walsh. Mike, thank you so much for being on the show today. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
This is one of those rare, exciting times where we have a chance to bring somebody onto the show that we actually have sort of in the social circle. Lisa Ullman, who's here with us today, somewhere hiding. There she is. Introduced this man to us, and I've spent an inordinate amount of time digging into you and the things that you've put out into the world publicly, the things that Lisa was kind enough to share, the things in the pre-interview. And as we were going through, the one thing that came out over and over and over is, in this world of success, and I really hope that you're a vanguard of an entirely new way of doing business. And the thing that came out was really pretty simple. You seem to accept the difficulties of being not only an entrepreneur, but being a human, and being comfortable with those difficulties even when people are playing with your money. Right. And I found that approach of being super empathetic to people and extending that out when married to the success at the level that you've had it really enticing. And we'll get into why it's enticing versus, say, intriguing, but it's very, very enticing to me. How did you develop that mindset?
Well, thanks for having me here, first off, and for that great introduction.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
That's not to say that I'm never an asshole, so let's get that out of the way right off the bat.
Fair.
I think it comes from experience. So I started a company in 2003 while I was in business school, and really planned on selling that in 3 or 4 years. But I had a bad investor experience, straight up. I signed a bad term sheet, so I couldn't raise money or sell the company without his approval. And it turned out through a couple of events that he wanted to put me out of business, even though we had $1 million in the company. So it was really hard. I busted my butt, didn't take a paycheck for many months, and just had to fight a lot of fights. And what I learned through that is that it's really hard to be an entrepreneur. Many years later, I sold that company. I started investing in Uber as an angel. I was in a pretty good spot, and I happened to be in the bathtub, because sometimes I take a bath because I can get through email faster. And I was thinking, this is the first time in a bunch of years that I can actually take my family back to Boston to enjoy Christmas without having to worry about payroll or anything like that. And then the immediate follow-up thought was, but I bet a shitload of people are actually worrying about that right now, and we should think about them. So I simply posted on Facebook, reach out to me if you need like 15 minutes of talk, not to try to solve your business problems, but to deal with the stresses that you might be bringing into the holidays. And I think I got like 60 responses. There are just a lot of people out there that are having a tough time running businesses and all phases of life, obviously. And I just think empathy is is huge. And if we can do that as a venture capital firm, if we can be known for the empathetic investors, I think that's a great differentiator.
I read the post that you did when you made that appeal to people, and one of the things that I found really fascinating, because if you guys aren't familiar with VCs, first of all, it's traditionally very difficult to get their time and attention, even if you're one of their portfolio companies. So like he was saying, he had somebody that put $1 million in his business and wanted to see him fold. So it can be, it's not always, but it can be a very cutthroat, ultra aggressive, dog-eat-dog world, which is why when I heard, wait, you've got this investor, and he's had incredibly successful investments, Uber and Salesforce, just to name two, and here's this guy that's playing at that level, has had that kind of success, and he's, the first Christmas that he can sort of de-stress, he reaches out to anybody else and basically says, let me carry some of that burden for you. And in the letter, was this hint that maybe there was something more than just pure brain chemistry for you and wanting to extend a hand and help people. And I thought, God, is this really a new way of doing business? Can this work? And what it said in the letter was really simple. If you're one of my portfolio companies, I'm guessing you smell a trap. This isn't a trap. Like, I actually want to hear if you're vulnerable, if there's something going on that is jeopardizing your health, that's also the health of the business. Mm-hmm. So, and to me that ties in with the notion, what we always tell people is be selfish. It doesn't mean be cruel. It doesn't mean knock somebody else down. It just means you're going to be living life from your own experience. Think about that, protect yourself, protect your sense of self-esteem, do things that move you forward, right, because that's good for the health of the business as a whole. Has that held up?
Yeah, I think so. In fact, I think I was watching your show with Tim Ferriss, which was awesome. And I think he was involved in one of these companies. So yeah, it's held up and they're all doing great. So far, in 24 months, that's not a long track record, but we've got 0 failures. And we're in 100 companies.
Wow. Yeah.
Some will fail. They're expected to.
Now, you set out to write a book. You are writing a book right now. If I understood correctly, it started out to be a book about decision making and has morphed into the most fulfilling way to live your life. Tell us about the transition from setting out to write that, and then what made it switch over.
Just about 4.25 years ago, my brother died he was killed or died in a snowmobile accident. And I was writing the eulogy, and having spent the day or two previous talking with a bunch of his buddies, I was like, he is the most generous person that I know of based on what I'm hearing and what I'm jotting down for notes. And then it just clicked, like, this book is about generosity, and this book has to be dedicated to Billy and his 4 daughters that he left behind.
You actually put as your 5 tips for success that people like to be around generous people. If we make the presumption that success is tied to not only personal fulfillment, but some level of success, either corporate recognition in terms of title and climbing up, or just pure financial success, how does presenting yourself as a generous person help you achieve that?
Many of the people that I have met that are now involved in my business, I've met through activities that have to do with giving. It's easy to build relationships when you've got the same sort of intentions and vision for problem solving, and you start collaborating, and then a business relationship pops out of it. Entrepreneurs like Branson and some others like that, where you can see a lot of that. I mean, he's just very generous. He's a great guy. I don't know anybody that doesn't like to be around him. And then everything that Bill Gates is doing.
And what are some of the surprises that came out of the interviews with Bill Gates and the like?
I'd say Bill Gates specifically was just how down to earth he is, and just what an awesome guy. He just wants to take 3 or 4 problems that he thinks he can solve before the end of his life.
Did you guys talk at all about what drives him to do that? I mean, you want to talk about somebody that never has to work again ever in their life, and they still do. And so, as a slight nod to Reddit, for any of the Reddit fans out there watching, I read something on Reddit the other day, and it was a shower thought. If you guys follow Reddit, I love those. And the guy said, dude, if I had millions of dollars, I would never work again. and that's probably why I don't have millions of dollars. And I thought, yeah. So obviously you can only speculate about what drives him, but you can tell me precisely what drives you. There's 3 things that we look for in any employee here, and I think it's created something very unique. We look for ambition, drive, and then the third, which is weird, is compassion. You ooze compassion, everything about you. When you were off camera, just the way you talk, everything you've ever written truly seems in lockstep with the way that you actually act. And maybe we'll get more later into the story about the guy who all you had to do was say yes to his terms. He was offering you $15 million and you turned it down because you thought he was being an asshole, and that you didn't want to work around assholes. So what drives you? Like, what is that thing? Because countless people have lost a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, and they didn't change. That certainly didn't cause them to reach out to other people. And there's some interesting combination that you have on the compassion side, but you're so successful. Like, what is that drive? If it's not greed, if it's not power, what is it?
Wealth building is great because you can do stuff with money. You know,
Right.
if you've got the resources, you can help a lot of people. But I think compassion is a big part of it. And there are 2 pieces to the optimization. One is selfish, like I want to be happy, which is why I don't want to hang around with assholes. And the other part is that I want to optimize for the joy around me. So whether that's my family that I'm trying to do things for to make them happier, or my friends, or my coworkers, or anyone that I interact with, I'm always thinking, like, what can I do today to make me and the people around me most joyful?
And when you say that you optimize for joy, that's really interesting to me. And it becomes interesting because the thing that this show must do to be the show that I want it to be is cross the chasm between theory and practice. If it's going to be about the first principles of success, the first principle is execute on your passions. If you're not executing against your passion, if you're not actively optimizing for joy, then people are trapped forever. And I'm so hungry for people to change as a result of the ideas that are being explored, because Lord knows I don't feel that I fully understand all this stuff myself, and it's meant to be an active exploration. So when I say that we're looking for compassion, it's because I think that we can build a stronger base for the business, because the real goal of the business is not to foster compassion. It's actually not. That's, I think, part of what will get us to the goal, but the goal is to end metabolic disease. So we play a game here called No Bullshit, What Would It Take? No bullshit, what would it take to end metabolic disease? One of those things, I think, is building an army of people who are compassionate. So now you've got a filter for that. So the hiring process, as necessitated by the goal, is to find people that have compassion.
Right.
Is that part of the optimization of joy for you, or is it purely like, that's just the state I like to be in, and if it made me poor and destroyed my company, I would still do it?
No, it's a balance. I mean, we want to build a community of givers and people that help each other out, which goes back to the point of this $15 million investor. We're just about to sign an agreement with an investor here in LA, a billionaire, and he changed the terms in the very last hour. And it's pretty good. It was a pretty good learning lesson for my 12-year-old. I didn't have a headset, so I had to put him on speakerphone, and I picked up my son from school, so he was listening in on this call.
Right.
And
Education.
I'm gonna call this guy Joe. So Joe says to me, well, these are the terms. This is what I'm willing to do. Take it or leave it. And Zach's my son. He knows that this is about a $10 to $15 million check. And I was like, well, leave it, Joe. And Zach looks at me like this, and he's like, 15 million. And I was like, yeah. And he said, well, Joe said, well, wait a second now. Maybe we can figure something else out. I'm like, you know what, Joe? Life's too short. I don't want to deal with this. I'm not so concerned about you doing this bait and switch with me in the fund, but I don't want you contaminating the rest of the community of LPs and founders. I don't want you to think that you can change the rules, because everybody, whether they invested $100,000 or $10 or $15 million, every investor is an equal contributor to this community, and we just can't have that. And he said, so that's it? I said, that's it. Have a great weekend. And
Wow.
And that was it. And Zach was like, I said, what do you think about that, Zach? He's like, I guess you had to do it. So
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that speaks to me at a deep, deep level as somebody who spent all too many years prioritizing money and saying, God, well, this is what we have to do. Man, it sucks that he's changing the rules, and it sucks to have to do business with people that you don't trust, but that's what we've got to do, right? You got to build a business based on profitability. And then finally, there is no more freeing moment than when you can face something like that and have no fear of loss.
Yeah.
Because if I have no fear of loss, you can't control me, right? And the moment you can control me, now you can start to really mess with the things that I truly hold dear, my sense of self, my ethics, all the things that I build my pride around. If you can get a hook into one of those, now you can be destructive in my life.
Right.
But if all you're playing at is money, you can really rise above that. But it really is, because people don't codify their life, because they don't live by a code, like really simply. These are the things that I do, these are the things that I don't do, and there's no gray area. It's very binary.
Right. Now, I must admit, I've got this Uber investment that's worth quite a bit of money, and I think things like that have allowed me to be able to make those decisions that I don't know if I would have been able to do that 10 or 15 years ago. Right. I wouldn't want everybody to think like, wow, I've made some shitty decisions. I think circumstances have a lot to do with being able to make those kinds of decisions. But we have support from 100 of our investors that we're going to make ethical decisions, and we're going to be empathetic.
It's interesting that you guys are appealing to the world that way, and what made this so interesting to me, and just off camera, are two guys that have invested in our company. And I said to them when I met them the very first time, I'm never taking an investment in this company, ever. And then as I got to know one of the guys, who we'll call Dave, because that's his name, Dave was unlike most people in general, and certainly unlike any of the VCs that I had pitched over the years. And when I met my wife, I said, well, I'm either never getting married or I'm marrying that woman.
Right.
With Dave, it was the same. I'm either never taking an investment, or we're going to take an investment from that guy. Like, he is like you. He leads with, there's only a certain type of person that I'm going to surround myself with. And we had a meeting this morning, and I almost stopped the meeting to say, like, I don't know if he does it on purpose, or if it's so baked into his personality, but there is one type of person that's going to be coming in front of you. They're going to be compassionate. They're going to be a human first and a businessman second.
Yep.
And at every turn, he surrounds himself with people that are decent human beings. And you said this, and I highlighted the life out of it. This is a safe place where you shouldn't feel judged. And I was like, who says that in business literature? Like, that's so weird and so outside of the norm. Like, you guys are here and we talk about that stuff. We talk about Brene Brown and being vulnerable and all that. But in the real world, outside of Quest, that shit is weird. People don't talk about that. No one says what you're saying. And that you're putting it out there, that you're using that as your beacon, and that you've had staggering success. That Dave, the same thing for them. They put it out there. It's how they're known. And they've had staggering success. I want it to be true so bad.
Right.
All right? Like, I want to be living, and I think we talked about this briefly, Seth Godin in the connection economy, right? The world changed. Social media came along, and it gave voice to people who before were voiceless. And now you can be rewarded or punished by who you are authentically as a brand. Because as a brand, you can't hide the truth. There's just too many points of contact now.
Right.
So if you've built a company from the ground up to really think about your customer, deliver value, think about the people that you're in business with, all that, you're actually insulating yourself. And I think I'm gonna make a bold proclamation. The future will be punctuated by the most successful companies on earth being driven by people who actually care about their customer. And that'll be it. Because we finally live in an economy where you can be rewarded for that. Does that ring true to you, or do you think I'm insane?
Yeah, no, it does. This approach does have a really beneficial, practical results. We're the architects of the zero waste economy. So we focus on companies that target underutilized assets and excess capacity. Airbnb of and Uber of, a lot of those types of businesses. But the other thing, this idea of giving back and investing in companies and entrepreneurs who themselves wish to give back, it gets checks in the door. Like, that's not the reason we do it. We do it because it's in here. And then the entrepreneurs know that we have their back. They know that they're joining a community that cares about them.
You have roughly 10 things that you use to dissect a company. Walk us through what those are as to whether you're going to invest.
One is that we think entrepreneurs will give back. And just a simple test that we do, all of us on the team have large social networks. So we want to feel that if we post something, then 1,000 people that we reach through our social networks will use that service. So we want to make sure that the entrepreneurs are people who will stick with it and they're tenacious, but they're also humble. You can't do this stuff, as you know. You can't do this on your own. You've got a team of people that help you with it, whether it's Dave, your investor, or your wife, or the rest of your team here. It just takes an army to get this stuff done.
Yeah, the stuff that you talk about in what you look for, which is obviously on your site and stuff, when you got to the people portion, that's when it got really interesting for me. And what you were just saying is so true. I have 2 business partners, Mike and Ron. This company is a unique fingerprint of the 3 of us working in collaboration. There's no way that any one of us could have done it alone. So really believe in team, really believe it's about people. And we have developed maybe a weird, almost unteachable way of assessing people. So I'm curious, how do you assess them? So here they are, the entrepreneur walks in, you love the idea.
Right.
At what point, how do you take it from a feeling that you have about them to something you can articulate to a team?
It comes down to chemistry and how, when we talk with them, how they think about business and how they think about relationships and partnerships and working with investors. So it really does come down to that quite a bit. A lot of it is gut.
All right, I'm gonna read a quote of yours here. If I say something that you don't completely understand or don't completely believe or agree with, please push me for more information. That's the only way you're going to get to the truth. So, being as how that was you, I'll take it that you were talking to me. I want to go deeper on the gut part. So, you're dealing in very expensive decisions. If you make the wrong decision, you lose money, your LPs lose money, it's obviously bad for business. Now, any one thing, fine, it's not calamitous. Some businesses are going to fail. That's the nature of the beast. I get that. But you've got to get, in fact, your job is very simply to pick the right entrepreneur and the right business model.
Right.
You have a gut feel. How do you translate that into a decision?
There's actually a lot that goes into the gut. So let me back up. I'm 48, so I've got 25 years of pretty serious business experience. I've sold a lot of stuff. I've got an engineering background. I've run sales orgs. I've started companies. Once we think it's a big market, we like the team. We ask a bunch of questions to really try to push the founders a little bit and knock them off their typical pitch. We can see how they respond, how they act as a team.
I would love to see that.
Yeah, I mean, we're not trying to be assholes, but we're really trying to see how people interact and
100%.
engage. You know, we dig in. I asked somebody earlier this week. She's an awesome entrepreneur, single mom, 8-year-old daughter, and she's been slogging at this business for 3 years. I'm like, how long do you want to do this? And I hope you do, but is this what you want to do?
Sure.
So questions like that, just to try to dig in, and she wants to do it.
Before we move off gut for a second,
Yeah.
Tony Robbins wrote an awesome book, Money, Mastering the Game, and he said basically the premise of this book is very simple. I'm going to go to the world's most successful investors and I'm going to ask them one simple question. If you couldn't hand your family any wealth, but you could hand them an investment strategy, what would that strategy be? If you couldn't be there to interview for these guys and help them select the right company to work for, people to partner with, whatever the case may be, what can you distill down for them that you've learned over the 25 years that informs your gut? Like, what concrete thing should they do? Is there a feeling in their stomach they should listen for? Is there a particular set of questions that apply across no matter who you're meeting?
Yeah.
What's the secret sauce?
It's a great question. It really is always, what do you think about the person that you're dealing with at that moment? So whether it's a job interview or a partner, or do you feel inspired by that person? Do you feel that you can trust that person? Can you work with that person? Can you have fun with them?
And how quickly do you get that? Do you take them out multiple times and just try to spend as much time with them as you can? Like, how do you go through that process?
Usually I've gotten that in the first interaction.
Like, are we talking 30 seconds where it's just immediate thin slice gut
I'd say
feel?
like an hour.
And how far do you think you could scale that back? To what what is the absolute shortest period of time?
I can say that there are many cases where I'll meet somebody in 5 minutes, I'm like, that's not going to work.
Right.
When my brother died, I was like, fuck it. I am not going to spend time with people I don't want to spend time with.
Right.
And that's sort of for me. So not everybody has had quite that experience.
So in a fairly cutthroat environment, I mean, you're up in Silicon Valley, it's very type A, you've got a lot of companies competing for relatively limited resources. How do you, with your very humanitarian approach, lots of empathy, how do you attract and keep high caliber companies? And is the empathy part of what keeps them?
We don't have that problem for some of the reasons that I've already mentioned, but we invest an amount into a company where we are usually more collaborative than we are competitive with another investor. And I'll just give you the specifics of that. Usually a seed stage round is $1.5 million, let's say. We try to invest in those seed stage rounds. We only want to invest about $500,000 in that first round. So we're not trying to be the lead investor. The competition is usually for that lead. And then many of those leads just want to bring us along for our networks and the work that we do and things like that. So we don't have a competitive challenge there like a lot of other VCs might.
Right.
The startups come to us because we've got a good reputation of helping out, and we've got these unique things. One's called Brand Camp, where we help them build their brand early on in the process. And just from a hiring standpoint, I mean, we're a startup with an early but awesome track record, and I plan to do this as far as business goes, as does Jillian, for the rest of our lives. So there's a good opportunity to grow with the firm, become a partner at some point in one of these funds that we raise, probably not this one, but the next one. So I think there's really good opportunity, and I believe we've got a pretty good reputation.
So if obviously the goal of your industry is wealth creation. You said earlier that wealth is, it allows you to do things, you can do things with wealth, help people, whatever the case may be. If this is something you plan to do for the rest of your life, what do you plan to allocate those resources towards?
Mental illness and mental health, and there are a couple others that we're pretty passionate about. So that's one piece. Jillian is already very philanthropic. She has a foundation and invests in a bunch of stuff. I'm involved in Charity Water, but I suspect that a lot of it will go towards some philanthropic things, and for me, one will be Charity Water. There'll be others though that we support.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for being on the show, man. This was
Appreciate
an
it.
absolute pleasure.
Fun, thank you.
Guys, this is a weekly show. If you haven't already subscribed, be sure to do so. And Mike, where can they find you online?
I'm at structure.vc, and my email address is mike@structure.vc.
Wow. Well, that's a nugget of gold. Be sure you take advantage of it. This guy is really out there trying to help people achieve something great. The more you stalk him online, the more you're going to realize that is absolutely sincere and that he backs it up with action. I hope truly that this is the beginning of a movement that a lot of companies rise up behind Mike and the rest of the people over at Structure. It's amazing, and if we can continue business in a compassionate direction, I think that we really can make massive and everlasting change, and that's certainly the goal of this show and this company. So, boys and girls, until next week, go out, do something great. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Thanks. Thank you.
What a pleasure having you on.